Welcome back, everybody. Left-wing suppression of free speech, both online and in the streets. Earlier this week, tech companies censored medical doctors releasing their experience with hydroxychloroquine for the treatment of the China virus. One of those doctors is one of our next guests, Dr. David Samadi, Newsmax medical contributor, director of men's health at St. Francis Hospital, and one of the top-rated doctors in New York City will be joining us hopefully in a minute. We're also joined by our friend Andy Ngo, independent journalist and editor-at-large for the Post-Millennial. He's one of several conservative journalists targeted on the streets of Portland by Antifa terrorists and BLM Marxists. Welcome to you both, gentlemen. Andy, we're going to start with you. The social media publishers, you know, they use a keystroke to silence those who deviate from left-wing thought, orthodoxy, or mainstream thought. Antifa and BLM, though, they use physical violence or even killing folks out there to silence dissent. You were out covering this story in Portland when a disgusting left-wing journalist pointed you out to the Antifa mob. Pick up the story from there.
Yeah, so I was actually working undercover. As you and your viewers may know, I was beaten last year on the streets while covering Antifa and also robbed. And so I've been very careful and trying to come up with creative ways on how I can be back there out on the streets. This news editor, Alex Zielinski, she works for the Portland Mercury, which is a left-wing publication in Portland. She had received intel from Antifa people who were stalking me. I'm still trying to figure out exactly how they figured out, but she outed me and stated where I could be found to tens of thousands of people on Twitter, and immediately people who were masked began shining their green lasers at my eyes. And these are the same types of lasers that have permanently blinded some of the federal officers.
Good grief. Okay, before we get to Dr. Samadi, I just want to ask, so this woman is considered a journalist? Is that what they call her? Is it journalistic to actually tell somebody where an undercover journalist is? And what is the aim? Did she want to stop you from covering the violence? Was that her aim?
I think the aim is same as what the Antifa aimed for, which is intimidation and even assault to get me to stop what I'm doing.
Yeah. How can any self-respecting journalist want to suppress the truth? That's right. She's a fake journalist. Dr. Samadi, I want to get to what happened to you. You were silenced by big tech. Here you are, a respected doctor. You're talking about the success of hydroxychloroquine in your practice, hands-on, and then all of a sudden you find what? It was your Twitter account that was suspended, right?
Yes, that's correct. So this happened out of the blue, without any warning. About a day ago, we woke up in the morning and the entire account was locked down. No warning, no issues, and there were few tweets that they had a problem. One was the fact that I said, you know, because this was politicized, if you don't like the president, don't prevent this from getting to the patient. The other one was about New York Times saying that they keep saying that this is an unproven treatment, and I said there are many studies suggest that this may work, and we just need to leave politics out of medicine. And because of those tweets, I mean, I never said this will cure this disease. I've been very careful. I've been in academic for 20 years. I know how to interpret research papers and research data. And I've been very careful for putting out the right information to help the public during this pandemic. And obviously, our freedom of choice, our liberty is at stake. If they can shut down a doctor who's trying to help the public, they can basically go ahead and do whatever they want, whether it's Google, Facebook, social media. One of our videos from Instagram just disappeared. So this is a very disturbing moment in this country. And this is happening in the United States of America. So I think our politicians need to jump on this and find a way to really take some of the power away from these social medias, because our freedom of speech is at stake and in danger.
No. Yeah, no kidding. You know, and to my knowledge, and you correct me if I'm wrong because you are an expert, you're actually a medical doctor, there are 2 published studies that had to be retracted because it was fake data that said that hydroxychloroquine didn't work. The only peer-reviewed study that has been published says that hydroxychloroquine has a benefit. To my knowledge, I have not seen any other peer-reviewed study that says it doesn't work. How about you?
So I'm not a medical doctor. I'm a surgeon. And but I have read all the articles that has come out, and you're right. There were some studies that suggested that this medication may not work, but most of those studies were at the time when this was a real advanced disease. These are sick patients that already had inflammation taking over their organ. They're either on ventilator or close to the ventilator, and it's obvious knowledge that this medication and even possibly remdesivir and hydroxychloroquine may not work for these kind of patients. All we've said for the last 6 months since the beginning of the pandemic is that it's possible, based on the Henry Ford study, based on a few other studies from France and other places, that when this medication is given at the beginning of the stage, before the disease starts to take off, whether it's with zinc,
Right.
vitamin D, vitamin C, and others, it can reduce the inflammation and save lives. And if it's going to save one life, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, and speaking of lives, Andy, I want to bring you back in to talk about the suppression back on the streets. We all know the name George Floyd, don't we? We all know his name, but there was a guy by the name of Andrew Duncombe who was stabbed in the back in Portland at the Democrats' peaceful protest. He's an alleged conservative journalist. He's age 25. There you see his picture. And then Burnell Trammell, who was a Trump supporter, a street preacher up in Milwaukee, by the way, the place of the Democrat National Convention. He was gunned down in broad daylight, yet no member of the press is talking about their black lives. What does it say to you about the state of the press when those black people can be killed and nobody says a peep about it in the mainstream press or in the Democrat Party?
Yeah, you brought up two disturbing examples, and I was actually in this covering this past weekend when that stabbing happened by this alleged Antifa supporter. So, it's no surprise that, from the beginning of BLM, it's the narrative has been very focused on a specific type of victim, those who are killed by police, regardless of if they were armed, if they were fighting back, if they were shooting. And so all the other lives that have black or whatever color who have died because of either police misconduct or gang violence, whatever, they're all ignored for this very small number of people who are dying in this particular instance. And so it has nothing to do with Black lives. I actually quite hate that slogan. I hate that Black Lives Matter as an organization, as a Marxist organization, has taken on a very benign sounding and noble sounding statement to push such a, in my view, wicked political agenda.
You're absolutely right. The agenda is silence. The idea, as you rightly point out, Marxism, shut down dissent, and they're using Black Lives Matter as a cloak. And Dr. Samadi, same thing with the big tech companies. They're using shame to try to stop information from getting out there. And my question to you, Mr. Samadi, is, do you think Twitter, Facebook, Google ought to be those who are deciding what medical information should be out there for the general public?
Well, that's an excellent question, because yesterday we saw there are politicians questioning the CEO of major companies, and they just basically touched the surface of some of the problems. And, they have to dig in and find out who are these big professors, or are there any doctors out there that are monitoring this? How could somebody on Twitter look at some of these tweets and says, this is not going to stay and this one is going to stick? There's so many strange tweets out there that people put in that could harm, and those are staying. But talking about this medication with logic, with scientific data, with very reasonable approach is becoming a red flag. So I think it's major censorship, it's a major bias. And, normally I don't make comments about politics, but since you were talking to your guests about Black Lives Matter, I always say that, as a surgeon, I can tell you that when I do these surgeries with robotic surgeries, on the outside, we all look a little different, maybe white, yellow, black, it doesn't matter. But I can tell you that inside, when I'm operating on everyone looks the same. It's the same artery, it's the same vessel. And a lot of these politicians and these organizations are putting and using the race against us. And that is by itself racist. I wasn't going to make any comments about this, and I've never done this. But I can tell you that I believe in God. I think that there is a creator. And I see that in the anatomy of all of us, and we're all the same inside. And I think we need to treat each other much better and kinder. And this kind of politics in the middle of pandemic and in the middle of all of this death and destruction, it doesn't make any sense. We need to unite and work together as one country, one nation.
Hey, get an amen to that. Dr. Samadi, Andy Ngo, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate you being here.
Newsmax TV is now America's fastest growing cable news channel. We give you the real news you need. So subscribe to our YouTube channel and give us a thumbs up. If you like this video, share it with your friends. Newsmax TV streams live on YouTube for free. Newsmax TV, real news for real people.